Hi, CCDA. This is Christina Foro, and I'm the Communication and Advocacy Lead here at CCDA. And I'm really thrilled to be here with my friends Keyona and Tim. I just spent some time getting to know them, and they're going to share with us a little bit about the work that they are doing in Charlotte. So I don't want to spoil it just yet, so you stay tuned. But I'm going to start by letting them introduce themselves, and then we'll kick it off. Do you want to kick it off, Keyona?
Sure. Hi, CCDA. My name is Keyona Osborne-Pannell. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and have had the privilege of leading the planning committee for the Charlotte Justice Conference for the past 2.5 years.
And hey, everyone, my name is Tim. I'm the co-creator of the CJC. Super excited to meet a lot of y'all at the CCDA conference. It will be my first but not final time. Super excited to have y'all here in Charlotte. I'm actually here in Uptown where the conference will be, and it's just going to be an awesome, super time.
Cool. Well, yes, I think it will be good to kick off with kind of some of the inspiration for our interview was hearing more about the Charlotte Justice Conference. So do you mind sharing with us, Tim, kind of what it is and what inspired you all to start the Charlotte Justice Conference?
Sure, yeah. So it began just as a plain idea that was really created from a frustration, which was in Charlotte, we see a lot of just conversations, right? It stays at just that. People will then ask the first question, which is, so what do we do with any of this, right? Be it housing, healthcare, right? Pick a topic. And I was frustrated that we've heard of other conferences like the CCDA actually kind of came up in that original conversation of, look, there's so many good conferences in other cities that are thinking very community, but they're also trying to think tier 2 of like what actual action steps can be taken. So let's just move like way beyond that. And a friend said, well, there's one way to ensure that Charlotte has a conference like that, and that is that we create one. And so I said, I don't like that answer, but I think you're right. And so we are now on year 5, which is amazing. We have an awesome team around it now. And so that's really our goal is how can we activate the church and other groups, other individuals over a slate of different issues facing Charlotte. And how can we be involved as a community? And we hear from the speakers are not the people in charge, right? The CEOs or the EDs. Let's bring in like the program people, the people whose hands are in the ground. Again, this is very CCDA type ideas, right? Find the people that have their hands in the ground who can be very, very honest with us. Hey, here's what you guys can do as a group to change the city.
Mm-hmm. I love that, especially like that I think you're right about a lot of the CCD principles of like, how do we listen to the community, the people that have like their boots on the ground. And I love that it's like place-based, like it's very much like, this is about Charlotte, and this is about what we're going through and what we're dealing with and how can we like, I bet it leads to a lot of like ways to coalition build and work together even too, which is neat.
For sure. I mean, most of the people who have joined our team who each year spends the whole year planning for that upcoming year, the vast majority of them were just at one conference and said, hey, I would love to get more involved. And so through there, we've just found random connections. We've had people come up 2-3 years after saying, hey, that one topic really changed me. That one speaker, and now I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And it's not me. It's not, just the team. It's bringing in these speakers who are deeply impacted either personally or again, they're very involved in an issue. And it turns out that when you have very persuasive people who have that experience, who can speak to, here's the issue Charlotte is facing. And then we bring in one kind of more keynote speaker who can speak on to really tie those things together, right? And that person usually isn't from Charlotte. It could be a more a large name author, just a professional speaker, things of that nature. So we've had some really neat people there, and we like having that at the end to kind of, again, bring in somebody from outside of Charlotte to really tie things together and say, hey, here's what I've seen in my travels to Africa. Here's what I've seen in my travels to South America. I live in LA. Here's what we're doing. Have you considered that? as a way to kind of weave some of these thoughts together.
Cool. And then what does it look like? Do you guys get into the community at any point with the conference?
Yeah, our goal is really stay behind the scenes. The goal is to really push forward events that are going on, push forward people, push forward the speakers, push forward more of the conversations. We don't really want to create our own thing in that sense. It's more so, hey, we have a platform, both on the conference, but also between conferences. Let's like use Facebook, IG, things like that, and partner with groups to push people who have come to the conferences to those events.
Right. Cool. Well, what are you guys doing this year for the Charlotte Justice Conference? And then I think I can hear some of what you're already saying, but I was also curious about how do you kind of listen to the community as you're figuring out content and things like that for the conference?
So this year's conference, we are for the first time inviting 2 keynote speakers to the conference. And so 2 speakers that are representing more of a national lens. And we are creating a justice weekend. So really inviting people to engage in conversation for a longer period of time than just one day. We also have intentionally chosen Indigenous Peoples Day as the weekend right before Indigenous Peoples Day is when our conference will be held. And so just to really make sure that we're engaging that conversation, there are a lot of Indigenous peoples and Indigenous land that Charlotte sits on. And so we really want to honor that and bring attention to it and make sure that we are creating space to really talk about what that means for the people in Charlotte who may not know that or may not realize it. So we're partnering with lots of different organizations throughout that Justice Week. And then we have, I believe, 4 different topics in addition to those keynotes. Housing is a topic that we always touch on. And in your question about how do we listen to the community, we try to make sure that we're focusing on topics that have been either big in the news or big in, the political space, or that we just know that have been impacting organizations that we're in touch with. Housing is perpetually one of those issues. And I know that that's the case in several cities across the country. But you may or may not know that Charlotte was ranked 50th out of 50 in upward mobility. So dead last. And so there's a real problem that we really want to continue to bring attention to, especially in the faith community, in recognizing that there's more that we can do to change that ranking and the state of housing in our city.
Wow, yeah. I can definitely, especially with the way the housing market's been the last few years too, I can imagine it's been even worse.
Yeah. A realtor recently told my parents who are looking to move to Charlotte that for every 1,000 people that are looking for a home, there are 200 homes available in Charlotte. And so it's definitely a crisis. We do try to take a different approach to housing each year. So it's not just every year, hey, there's no housing available. But last year we approached it from a reparations perspective. We've talked about gentrification. We've talked about homelessness. So we always are creative with what piece of housing we'll talk about and use current events to make that decision. I'll give another example. Last year was one of our first times focusing on mental health. And so recognizing that the pandemic has caused a spike in mental health issues with people who may not have already had the mental health issues, or even in people who were already experiencing struggles with mental health, there was this increase. And so really figuring out, what does justice in the mental health space look like? What does justice look like to make sure our kids are mentally healthy during this time, to make sure working parents who have to now homeschool their child are mentally healthy, and even just people who are extroverts and are struggling being trapped in the house and not talking to people on a regular basis. So we try to do that every year with our cohort of planners that are putting together each year's conference.
Yeah, I love that. I love that too, because that's not always like an immediately obvious topic to talk about, maybe more and more, but I think especially in justice spaces, it's an important thing to continue to be talking about, especially for people on the ground and practitioners. It's really neat. Yeah, I think that will be a fun part. It kind of leads us toward like our conference, because this year we're talking about well-being, and I know that'll be an essential part of that. But I wanted to hear just from you guys, what are some of the things you love about Charlotte? What are you hoping like the conference attendees should look, or what do you think they should look forward to coming to your city? And what are some highlights that you can give to us? Tell tips of where to go, all that kind of thing.
Woo. All right, Tim, I'll try, but you've got to answer after me because I'm not going to remember everything. So one, I would say you've got to try some of the different foods in Charlotte. And it may not be the best foodie city ever, but we have restaurants representing all sorts of cultures, and restaurants that are brand new popping up with some famous chefs. And so whatever kind of food you like, there's some sort of restaurant in Charlotte that's got the right vibe and the right taste for you. So I would definitely say check out the food. The murals are a new favorite of mine. My husband and I, every time we see a mural, we note where it is so we can take a picture in front of it. The art scene is definitely starting to grow more in Charlotte. I wish that you all were coming the year that we had Black Lives Matter on the street in Uptown Charlotte, because that was really cool and a really artistic demonstration here in our city. And then definitely check out some of the history. Charlotte is known as the Queen City, and there's these like 4 statues right in the middle of Uptown Charlotte. And so I would encourage you to check out some of those historical statues and monuments. We've had some streets recently whose names were changed because of petitions from the public about the injustices that were caused by the people whose names were originally on the street. So look that up and maybe take a picture next to the new street sign. They're very new. So those are a couple ideas I have. There's a lot to do in Charlotte. There's always something going on, but definitely food, history, art, and the new street names.
Yeah, when we went to Charlotte with the CCDA staff a few months ago, that we went on a kind of walking tour in downtown, and they shared about all of those, especially those 4 statues. And I was just like, this is like really revealing about a city, you know, like the history behind it and everything. So yes, I agree. Y'all should do that if you have time at conference. What about you, Tim? You got any suggestions?
The QC is a very complicated city. It is beautifully complex. You know, we try to be the new South. So when you're here in Uptown, it looks very shiny and pretty. Come see our cool skyscrapers. And I do agree that on the surface, right, the food, the drink, we are known for making a good craft beer. And if you need to know the cool spots, please reach out to me. I will find you a drink here in this town that fits your preference. But to Keyona's point, there's also a beautiful culture that I think sometimes Charlotte overlooks. We have East Charlotte, which is where folks from literally every country in the world live. If you want to go from a Syrian pastry shop to a Himalayan store to I think it's a Turkish food cart. That's just one strip mall in one part of Eastway, Charlotte, right? You can go anywhere around Charlotte and find good food, but that's because of the people. We are in the South. People here are extremely friendly. If you come for the conference, and please do come for the conference, if you are in this large place called Uptown, ask anyone and they will happily point you where to go. We have sports, we have plenty of places to go, just play outside and explore. But really, I think the most incredible thing about this city is the people who are just the friendly tour guides to the hard truth-telling folk, some of whom I think you will hear at this year's conference.
Cool. Well, thank you both for sharing a little bit about the Charlotte Justice Conference, and it's very inspiring to hear. Like, so both Tim and Keyona have full-time jobs to do this that they do, and it's really amazing to see kind of this beautiful, almost like coalition of ministries and nonprofits and groups that have come together to kind of talk about justice issues in their city. And so, thank you for that inspiration, and I'm really looking forward to coming to conference this year there.
Thank you. It was great to meet you. We look forward to having you and all the CCDA visitors coming to see our city. I live in East Charlotte, so I'm happy to show you any cool restaurants, to Tim's point, from those different cultures.
Y'all are really winning me over with the food, so I'm happy. Thanks, y'all.